After starting a full-time job, many people notice something strange. They slowly stop reading books. This isn't unique to one country or culture. It happens to people everywhere. It's often explained in simple ways. I'm just too busy. I spend too much time on my phone. But those explanations don't really explain why reading disappears. Today, I'd like to talk about a book by Japanese author Kaho Miyake, titled Why Work Makes It Hard to Read Books. What makes this book interesting is its starting point. It clearly says this is not a problem of motivation or discipline. Instead, it looks at how modern work is structured. The main idea of the book is quite clear. Modern work doesn't only take our time. It also takes our attention, our way of thinking, and even our sense of who we are. As a result, reading begins to feel unnecessary. Sometimes it even feels like noise. So this isn't really a problem about reading books. It's a problem about how we work and how we organize our lives. One of the key ideas in the book is that modern work demands our whole self. Even after work hours end, our minds don't really stop working. We think about deadlines, performance, evaluation, and what comes next. Even weekends often feel like recovery time for the next workday. In that state, there isn't much mental space left. Reading naturally asks us to slow down. It invites us into a world that may not be immediately useful. When work constantly requires full engagement, reading becomes difficult, not because we dislike it, but because we no longer have room for it. The book then talks about how our values have changed. Today, many actions are judged by questions like, is this useful? Does this help me grow? Will this lead to results? When this way of thinking becomes internal, reading splits into two types. First, work-related or self-improvement books. They are meant to be useful, but often feel like an extension of work. Second, novels or personal interest books. These can be enjoyable, but they often create guilt. Should I really be doing this right now? In both cases, reading stops being restful. The book describes this situation by saying that reading starts to feel like noise. Reading includes many detours, stories not directly connected to our goals, ideas we can't use right away, time spent without clear outcomes. Meanwhile, work and digital media demand speed, efficiency, and clarity. The more we adapt to that environment, the more reading's detours feel wasteful. We open a book and start thinking, how is this relevant to me right now? At that point, reading no longer feels inviting. Here, the book goes even deeper. In modern society, work is no longer just a way to earn money. It becomes a way to define ourselves. What job do you have? What results do you produce? How are you evaluated by others? When work becomes closely tied to identity, time away from work can feel uncomfortable. Reading produces no immediate results. There's no evaluation, no clear achievement. So, the more work defines who we are, the more uneasy reading can feel. The book is very clear about the solution. It's not about better reading techniques. And it's not about forcing habits. What matters is letting go of the idea that we must give our whole self to work. The author describes this as living with only half of yourself engaged in work, not giving your entire identity to productivity and results. Reading becomes a symbol of this choice. Not for growth, not to stay competitive, but to protect a part of life that doesn't need justification. If work makes it hard to read books, it doesn't mean you're weak. Often, it means you've taken work seriously, very seriously. That's why this book leaves us with an important question. Is it really okay to give 100% of our lives to work and results? If you feel the need to pause, reading can be a quiet way to do that. Not to move forward, but to remember that standing still is allowed. When we choose not to give our whole selves to work, reading quietly returns to our lives.